Good morning, Mr. Pretorius. Good morning, everybody.
Morning, DCJ.
Good morning in the new year. Yes, are you ready?
Yes, we're ready, Chair. There are a few procedural matters to deal with, but the respondent in the present application for the issue of summons in relation to the evidence of former President Zuma are present. If they could place themselves on record.
Yes.
Good morning, Chairperson.
Good morning.
Compliments of the New Year.
Compliments of the New Year to you.
Together with Mr. Skakane and instructed by Manja, we appear for the former President Zuma.
Thank you. Yes.
By way of introduction, Chair, the answering affidavit with documents annexed was received yesterday afternoon at about 4 o'clock. It raises a number of issues in various categories, and if I could just outline these in order to decide a way forward.
Yes.
We're ready to argue the whole matter, Chair, and that could, if properly ventilated, take up to a day. And it's necessary, perhaps, given the program today, to find an efficient and effective way to deal with this application. The issues fall into various categories. The first category of issue is the medical condition, as we now learn in the answering papers. That is a factual inquiry. The medical condition is not established on the papers, but there is a tender to provide you with confidential information in chambers. And you, Chair, will then assess that in relation to a summons issued for 27 January 2020. The second category of issue is a category of legal issue. Your right to issue summons, Chair, is challenged on various grounds. That's a separate issue. That is an issue that perhaps needs properly to be ventilated for the present and future purposes. But it is not urgent that it be dealt with today. The third category of issues, in the answer, there are a number of attacks on the integrity of the Commission, on members of the legal team, based on incorrect facts, and they need to be dealt with. We're ready to deal with issues 2, the legal issues, and the factual inaccuracies and attacks on the integrity of the Commission now, should you wish that to happen. But there is one caveat, Chair. This application and its contents may have future implications in litigation or otherwise, and perhaps it is necessary for that reason to go on record at some stage or another in a formal sense, so that these matters are properly dealt with on record rather than just dealt with ad hoc in argument, but we're ready to deal with them. Ultimately, however, today we would seek the issue of a summons on an appropriate date. If that appropriate date becomes inappropriate for medical reasons or whatever, then that can be dealt with at that stage. But it seems that the case of the former president is that he is ill and receiving treatment, both here and abroad, will not be available until March for that reason. That needs to be established before you, perhaps at your instance by confidential information given to you in chambers. But those are the procedural issues that need clarity now. We're ready to proceed, should you so direct, on all issues. However, it may be preferable to go formally on record to deal with attacks on the integrity of the Commission and to deal with inaccuracies and to deal properly with the legal issues and challenges raised to your jurisdiction and capacity in the answering papers.
Well, I don't see why argument on this application should take a day at all. There may be a lot of papers that are put in here, but really the issues are very crisp as far as I'm concerned.
As far as we're concerned too, Chair.
Yes.
It depends on the...
It may well be that there are matters that the legal team and the Secretary might need to respond to because they have been said, they are on record, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we would need to take a whole day for this application. I think that you may need to decide whether you need an opportunity to have a replying affidavit to deal with these various matters before the matter is argued, in which case we may have to maybe adjourn for a few days before argument is had, because the usual way is that if an answering affidavit is put up and there are matters that you feel need to be responded to, is to have that dealt with properly by way of a replying affidavit. So you might wish to take a view of that. I would not be disinclined to adjourning the hearing of argument to later this week, if that were to be the way to go. So that there is that issue. I think that's the first issue on which you need to take a view. And
Chair, the factors relevant to that decision are firstly that the original urgency of the matter, or semi-urgency, was dictated by the issue of a directive by yourself that Mr. Zuma should appear on the 27th of January. That may or may not fall away depending on your decision in relation to the first issue, the medical condition. The second issue, the need to go on record. We're ready to argue and deal with all the issues. We prepared last night and we're ready to go on record. It may be that it's convenient that an affidavit is filed in due course. It needn't delay the argument. The time taken today is dependent entirely, Chair, on the attitude taken by my learned friend and to what extent he wishes to canvass the numerous issues, both factual and legal, raised in the answering affidavit. But you will control those proceedings, no doubt, Chair. But other than that, we agree that the issues are quite crisp. Your power cannot be questioned at this stage, at least in this forum. It is a matter of statute. And the necessity for Mr. Zuma to give evidence is also a matter that can be dealt with in a straightforward matter. The real issue then is whether a summons is necessary or that one can continue to rely on promises of cooperation.
Yeah. I am not sure about having argument first and then maybe a replying affidavit later, or just responding from the bar on matters dealt with in an answering affidavit to put on record. I'm not sure whether that's
you're
the
correct,
best
Chair.
way.
It's untidy.
Yes.
And
yes,
may, in
yes.
fact, because of those reasons, have consequences that the Commission
Yeah.
needs to protect itself against
Yeah,
if there are later proceedings.
yeah, so,
That's that issue. But in the meanwhile, Chair, it may be convenient to deal with the factual medical issue in
Yeah.
chambers.
yeah. Let me say this about the medical issue. Last time, when the lawyers for the former president indicated that he was not able to come and appear before the commission because he was not well, the commission did not even ask for a medical certificate. The commission accepted his word. At least I accepted his word. This time he has offered to make available to the chairperson information to support his position that he needs to be away on medical grounds. I just want to say at this stage, I'm not saying, I think it's a good thing that he has offered without being compelled by anybody to make that information available to the chairperson. I may have to see what he offers to let me see. But if I do so, I would not be doing so without any reluctance. From what I've been told in the affidavit, it seems that what he is offering me to see may reveal his illness, and I have some discomfort with having to see any information relating to anybody's illness as such. I'm not saying that I necessarily will not, but I just want everybody to know that it's not something I would do without any discomfort. But the first issue would be whether, if we talk about the way forward, one of the issues we have to look at is whether, as things presently stand, the legal team would be insisting that the summons be issued in regard to the period that has already been determined, namely 27 to 31 January, or whether the position may be that maybe in regard to those dates, there may be an acceptance that there may be a problem in terms of his medical situation. And then the question might then be whether the legal team would seek that I authorize the issuing of a summons for other dates other than the dates of 27 January to 31 January. I think that's because if if it's accepted that maybe for the dates of 27 to 31 January, there is a problem because maybe there might be no basis not to accept what he has said I could be shown as showing that he needs to be away. Then it may be that what might remain is to say, okay, the dates of 27 to 31 January might be a problem, but let's talk about whether a summons should be issued for another set of dates, and we take it from there. And that might tie in with the question of a replying affidavit as well. So it may well be, depending on the position taken in regard to the 27th to the 31st of January, it may well be that an adjournment to enable the legal team to file a replying affidavit and new dates to be determined, and argument can then be had. An argument might not need to be had only when those dates may be unknown. Maybe it can be had even if they have not been determined, or maybe they need to be determined first. So there needs to be an application of mind to that issue. So maybe I should hear what counsel for the former president has to say in terms of these preliminary remarks before we proceed. Would that be fine, or would you like to say something?
It's in order. May I just place on record in response to what you've said, Chair. Firstly, we would adopt the latter approach. We have no basis to contest the medical information on the affidavit, but would insist, perhaps insist is too strong a word, Chair, would request that summons be issued for a later date, subject to consideration in the interim. And the next point is, because of the importance of the issues raised in the answering affidavit for the integrity of the Commission and its work, it is preferable that we go on record before argument. The other alternative is too untidy and has possible
no, argument would have to be on record and in open hearing.
Yes.
So maybe let me hear Mr. Masu, and then we take it from there.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
Just as a preliminary remark, I would urge that this commission and particularly the leaders, the legal team of the commission, extends to us and our client the presumption of integrity. It's very important because the commission is doing very important work. They must try, difficult as it is, to extend to us the presumption that when we give our word to the commission, we mean what we say. It's very embarrassing to stand here and to have to tell the commission that the president or the former president has a medical condition that prevents him from coming to the commission under a threat of subpoena. These are issues that can simply be dealt with to preserve the dignity of people that are involved. The idea that they are ready to proceed and have this matter heard, but insist on filing an affidavit and a replying affidavit in future is just superfluous. It doesn't make any sense, because on what conceivable basis is a replying affidavit conceived under the circumstances where they insist that they are ready to argue the matter? We are ready to argue the matter, but we accept that we've got to preserve the atmosphere of dignity that this commission ought to insist on. We take great exception that it has come to this point where the legal team sees it fit, in the face of having been told that the president or the former president has a medical condition that prevents him from coming, that they insist on having to argue a summons. It's just extraordinary, but it tells us exactly what we accuse them of, that there is a deep-seated antipathy, and I use very strong terms because it is what it is, towards our client. On what basis, after he's been told, after Mr. Zuma has gone for medical treatment, when he goes next week, on what basis is a summons application competent? He was not present on the scheduled date because of a medical condition. On what conceivable basis is it proper, is it consonant with the dignity of this commission to compel Mr. Zuma to come and do this? And in fact, the idea that they then issue a media statement telling the world that they have summoned Mr. Zuma to come under threat of being imprisoned is in itself wrong. But that said, perhaps let me go to the last part of what the chairperson raised.
Maybe before you do so, because I don't want to forget, Mr. Masuku, the media statement was sent out on my instruction, not on the instruction of the legal team. What the rules of the commission says is that, I think it says from time to time, the commission will inform the public what it will be hearing. And as you know, there was the Christmas break, and the media statement wasn't just dealing with, the media statement was simply dealing with what will the commission be dealing with as it resumes. It said it will be hearing witnesses relating to law enforcement agencies. It said it would hear an application to be moved by the legal team to seek an authorization from the chairperson to authorize the secretary to issue summons against the former president. As far as the former president, that's all that it said. Whatever else the media might have said didn't come from the statement. So it simply said it will hear some witnesses relating to actually Mr. Themba Masego's issue. It would hear some witnesses relating to the Waterkloof landing. It will hear an application to be moved by the Commission's legal team for the chairperson to authorize the issue of summons. It didn't say anything more than that about the former president.
That's correct, Chairperson. The impact of a media statement in those terms is that there is an incredible interest from the public regarding the appearance of Mr. Zuma. It invariably exposes him to incredible attacks, political attacks. And while the chair may believe that that shouldn't concern him, I'm saying even the idea, the chair must consider a procedure that does not expose witnesses to this kind of attacks. I mean, if you look at what the media and the commentaries on the media regarding the summons, you will see that it's an unpleasant thing. For someone we have told the commission is not feeling well, to live under the threat that he will be forced to appear before a commission of inquiry under threat of being arrested lacks dignity. And what we are asking the commission to do is that while the leaders of the commission, the leaders of the legal team of the commission is an obligation to the commission, they must extend to the former president the presumption of dignity. When he says he's not feeling well, he's not playing games with them. So I still maintain that this media statement, neutral as you put it, as you have, Chair, does become a platform for condemning Mr. Zuma in public. And this is a commission sitting in public.
Yes, Mr. Masuku, to the extent that it may be necessary, and I know the media liaison person of the commission is inside the room, they could even give you a copy of the actual media statement that was sent out. It will reflect what I'm saying.
Chair, I'm not complaining about the content of the media statement. I accept that the media statement is what you've said it is. All I'm saying is that once that announcement is made, you must accept that there is an incredible public interest that is generated from the position taken by the legal team, which is that they are going to be bringing this application for summons. One of which is that the impression being given is that it is necessary to summon him, even when he is sick or when he is not feeling well.
Well, let me say that I don't think that at the time of the issuing of the media statement, the commission had already been advised that he was not well to come to the commission on the 27th.
There was prior information that he had not been able to come previously because he was not well.
Previously, yes. But that didn't mean, obviously, that he would never be able to come. There won't be dates in the future when he would be able to come. So what I'm saying is, in issuing, it's not as if the statement was issued in the knowledge that for that week, 27 to 31 July, he would not be available because of medical condition.
But you see, if there was a rigorous adherence to what the chair said in our last adjournment, which is that the appearance of Mr. Zuma will be arranged with Mr. Zuma, this would not have been necessary. But that said, can I then just address you on the way forward that I believe?
Yes, no, that's fine. The only reason I interrupted you was just to make sure that there is understanding that in issuing the statement, well, one, that is, if there is any criticism to be raised, it's not against the legal team, it's against me, but that the statement was nothing more than to do what our rules say, that from time to time we must tell the public what we are going to be busy with, and that the statement wasn't intended for any other thing than just to inform the public. But I think I accept that you accept that the statement was neutral. Your concern is that, neutral as it may have been, once it has been issued, it seems to have generated certain criticism of the former president. I think that I hope I understand you correctly.
Because we are of the opinion that the position taken by the legal team of the commission suggests that the former president is not interested in coming to the commission and can only do so under compulsion. I'm instructed to offer to the chair that the leader of the medical team that is involved in the treatment of Zuma would be prepared to meet with the chair to explain to the chair the nature of the condition and the challenges that Mr. Zuma is facing, and to do so under very strict conditions of confidentiality because of the nature of a president's medical condition is a security issue. And not us, not the legal team, not anybody else would be in that room where the chair would be briefed on that aspect. That we have to come to this is unfortunate. Yeah. But that said, that is what we have been instructed to offer the chair. I know that the chair indicated that there was no request for Mr. Zuma to issue a sick certificate. That too would be astonishing under the circumstances. We will argue when the matter is ripe for hearing, because clearly the matter is not ripe for hearing, whether on the so-called attacks on the integrity of the commission or the leaders, or any of the factual issues. It's not ready for argument today. They must prepare a replying affidavit to CSC to raise whatever issues they want to raise, dispute whatever disputes they want to make. As the chair suggests, they must then amend the target of the summons in terms of the dates for which they want to compel Mr. Zuma to appear. In fairness, they cannot ask for an order, an open-ended order, that any time he comes out of hospital, whatever his condition is, whatever the dates are, he must simply come under summons. It's just not a constitutionally compliant. I mean, where is Ubuntu in all this? He's going for an intensive medical treatment. When he comes back, we must be arguing about bringing him under summons. Someone who is clearly told the commission that he's going for a medical treatment. And when he comes back, what do we know about his condition then to suggest that there is a basis on which he should be brought under summons? But we can argue that when they file their replying affidavit. We would obviously reserve our right to respond to some of the issues they raise in their replying affidavit. To the extent that they raise new matters, we're happy to do that. But as for today, I accept that the Commission's position, the Commission's suggestion, that and Mr. Pretorius says concession, if it's a concession, that there will be no basis to ask for summons in respect of the scheduled dates that are coming. They must think about dates in future, or the chair must then suggest dates after Mr. Zuma comes from medical treatment, which dates will then, once the chair has indicated the date that he proposes after Mr. Zuma has come from hospital, when he wants him here, the medical team can then amend their relief to relate to those particular dates.
Well,
why that is important, Chair, is because as in these dates, we were able to come and to indicate to the Commission that he is not going to be available, he's not even in the country when that happens. So a summons would not be possible to implement. As of the future dates, what is the basis for summons after he comes back from the thing? But if they want to argue that, they must wait until you schedule dates. They cannot ask for an open-ended issuing of summons with no specific dates in mind, and then we can deal with it on that basis. Because then we would have to consult the President on that time, look at the circumstances that he faces at the time, and determine whether or not he is able to attend. So that is the way we see the issues going forward.
Well, I think I just want to say something about a point which is made in the answering affidavit and which you have also touched on with regard to what I said last time, namely that dates would be arranged. The answering affidavit does reflect me saying so. But this is what I can say. I never meant and never intended that dates would have to be agreed with the former president's legal team first. I had determined the dates of the July when the former president appeared here myself, and that's what I have sought to do whenever the fixing of any dates has had to be done by me. But even other dates, they are suggested to me by the legal team and I approve. The reason why I would not want to subject myself to a condition that dates would have to be agreed is because I know too well the kinds of challenges that can arise when the arrangement is that dates would have to be agreed. So I retain to myself and reserve to myself the right to determine the dates. But that does not mean that I don't welcome representations. If, for example, I'm informed that the former president is not going to be in the country for the next 4 weeks, I'm not going to determine a date within those 4 weeks, so because of those representations. But I don't want to say he won't be required to come to the commission unless the dates have been agreed. I haven't done it with other witnesses simply for the reason that it creates challenges, and because there are so many people who have come to the commission, if we were to have to agree dates with them, because they might say, well, you are agreeing dates with the former president, why do you not want to agree dates with us? It could create logistical problems. So that's the only reason. So the only reason why I think, to the extent that I may have used the word arranged, the only thing I can think of is I may have been thinking of arranged within the commission as opposed to agreed with the former president's legal team. So that's the only clarification that I wish to make. And when I do so, I'm not saying that you are bound to understand what I said in the same way that I'm explaining it. I'm just
No, Chair, we are bound by your explanation. We would not ignore what you because we as I started at the beginning, we extend the presumption of integrity. When you tell us that that's what you meant, that's we must unequivocally accept that.
Yes,
but I accept too. I'm comforted too by the fact that the Chair accepts that the ruling was open to us. Believing that we were entitled to be told, firstly, that these are the dates that we're thinking of. Is it convenient for you to attend, or isn't it convenient for you to attend? That's how we understood the ruling. But now that it's been made clear, we accept that is the position, and we can take it no further than that.
Okay.
So in light of that clarification, of course, they may reflect it in their replying affidavit that the clarification was made at the hearing of this. This is certainly not how we understood it. Certainly not how we have interacted with the legal team of the team. We have indicated to them that we believe that there was a ruling that we must agree on the dates, or at least arrange the dates in concert, and not unilateral decision. But you've made that clear.
Yes. No.
We appreciate that.
That's fine. No. Thank you. I think maybe I should allow Mr. Pretorius if he has got something to say. But it may be that after he has said what he wishes to say, we should adjourn for a few minutes, and maybe counsel on both sides can see me in chambers, and we can talk about the way forward.
As the Chair pleases.
Thank you.
Perhaps for the record, it's necessary to clarify the position from the legal team's point of view. We learnt yesterday at 4 o'clock of the medical condition of Mr. Zuma. We do not persist in seeking summons for the dates dictated by you, Chair, 27th of January, but we will seek the issue of summons for a later date that is appropriate. In relation to the question of whether we should go on record in an answering affidavit, it is clearly our position that before the matter is argued, we should go on affidavit to deal with the various matters raised in the answering affidavit, which would require a postponement. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I think we will take an adjournment now, and I will invite counsel on both sides to see me in chambers so that we can discuss the way forward, the practicalities that need to be discussed on the way forward. And after that, then we will resume. So I will adjourn for that purpose now. We adjourn.
All rise.
Mr. Pretorius.
Chair, following on the meeting in chambers, may we ask you to direct that firstly the replying affidavit be filed on or before close of business on Friday, 24 January, and that the application, the present application, be adjourned to a date to be arranged. Thank you.
The Commission's legal team will deliver a replying affidavit on or before close of business on Friday, the 24th of January. That is one. With regard to what is going to happen in regard to this application and the further appearance before the Commission of the former President, what has been agreed in the discussion involving myself and counsel on both sides is that this application is to be adjourned to a date to be arranged, and I hasten to say arranged doesn't mean agreed. That is one. Two, I have accepted with some reluctance, but I have accepted the offer made by the former president that the leader of his medical team should see me and in confidence convey to me information that may assist in understanding the medical reasons relating to his failure to appear at some stage in the past before the Commission, as well as information relating to the future concerning up to when he might not, for medical reasons, be able to appear before the Commission to give evidence, and when there would be no medical reasons for him not to appear. It's been accepted that with regard to this 27th to the 31st of January, the former president need not appear before the Commission because of the medical reasons that he has given. The consultation or meeting that the leader of his medical team will have with me will, it is hoped, assist in looking at dates when his medical condition would not prevent him from appearing before the Commission. So, this application will then stand adjourned to a date that will be arranged at the right time. Now, before we finalize, I just want to check with Mr. Pretorius and Mr. Masuku whether I've covered everything that needs to be said publicly that we discussed. Mr.
Yes,
Pretorius? Yes, okay. Mr. Masuku?
No, Chair, you've missed one aspect,
Yes.
which is that Mr. Zuma has indicated unequivocally his willingness to appear before the Commission. That's a
Yes.
very important aspect.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Counsel for Mr. Zuma has emphasized that Mr. Zuma repeats his commitment to appear before this Commission and answer such questions as the Commission may wish to put to him.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, then, the application is adjourned and another date will be arranged in due course.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes. Thank you.
May we adjourn for the next witness to be prepared.
Yes, I'm going to take the tea adjournment and we'll resume at 25 to 12. 25 to 12, yeah. We adjourn.
without your leave, since you have handled the file already. I beg leave to hand up, and then the registrar will, after the hearing, replace 14. Yes, thank you.
Yes, okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. May the affidavits of Ms. Christine Anderson be admitted as Exhibit FF15.
Is that together with all the annexures?
Together with all the annexures, yes,
Are
Chair.
there two affidavits here?
Yes, Chair. In fact, the one is an annexure because it's an affidavit that she made before the Board of Inquiry.
Okay. The affidavit of Colonel Christine Anderson will be admitted and marked as Exhibit FF1515, together with its annexures.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Chair, one other aspect, Colonel Anderson had indicated that she is comfortable testifying in English, but she does sometimes wish to mention certain words in Afrikaans, and for that reason we arranged Ms. Wallace, who's a qualified interpreter, to assist Chair. She is seated next to the witness. Thank you.
Yes, for the record, Ms. Wallace, the interpreter, has been sworn in as well.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. May the witness be sworn in, Chair?
Yes, please administer an affirmation. Well, oath. Yeah.
Thank you.
Please state your full names for the record.
Christina Magdalena Anderson.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
No.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
Yes.
Do you swear that the evidence you will give will be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Colonel Anderson, in front of you, you have a bundle that is marked Exhibit FF15. If you turn to page 1 of that, there is an affidavit. And could you just turn to page 8? I'm so sorry, your signature appears at page, I beg your pardon. 8. Page 7, I beg your pardon.
7.
Yes, thank you. Is that your signature?
That is so?
Is that the affidavit that was prepared for you on your behalf by your legal representatives?
Yes, it is.
And do you confirm that the contents of that affidavit, the contents are true and correct?
Yes, it is.
Yes, thank you. And then over the page, there is a divider. There is another affidavit that starts from page 9. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And that affidavit, your signature appears at page 1515.
Yes.
Is that also your signature?
Yes.
Is that an affidavit that you had submitted to the Board of Inquiry,
Yes, I did.
which was held by the Defence Force?
Yes, Chair, I did.
Yes, thank you. And you also confirm the contents thereof to be true and correct?
Yes, sir.
And the annexures attached thereto are the annexures that you had placed to those affidavits in support of your evidence?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Could you just, for the record, place on record your qualifications, please?
My record, my qualifications or my...
No, you can
Or
do
your
both
work
career
experience.
or
My career.
your experience, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Chair, I joined the Air Force in 1976, whereafter I did my basic training, my officers forming course and the junior staff course. I attended I was transferred to various units in the Air Force, in which I finished my career at Air Force Base Waterkloof, and then I was put on special leave for 2 years, in which I retired in 2014. But I used my time while I was on special leave wisely and started studying psychology, and I'm currently busy with my honours.
Thank you. And could you just tell the Chair which years were you based at the Waterkloof Air Force Base?
I started at Air Force Base Waterkloof as the base ops officer in 2004, whereafter I was transferred to movements from 2008 till I finished my career.
Yes. And what are the duties of someone who's placed at movements?
I was there as the acting officer in charge of movements control.
Yes. Now, you submitted your statement in response to a 3.3 notice that was issued in relation to the evidence of Ms. Sindane, where the JCPS report was attached. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chair.
And in your statement to the Commission, you responded to some of the allegations contained therein.
I did, sir.
Yes. We are going to deal with that, but if you do not mind, could you just tell the Chairperson, because the critical thing, as you know, is the Waterkloof landing, the Jet Airways landing at the Waterkloof Air Force Base. Could you just tell the Chair, how did that come about? How did you know that there was an aircraft that was going to land at the Waterkloof Air Force Base, which was a commercial aircraft and not from the Defence Force?
Chair, it was during the end of March, beginning of April 2013, that I got a telephone call from Ambassador Kurani, which was the Chief Director of State Protocol, and he wanted to know, it was late in the evening, it was about 9 o'clock, I remember I was still in bed, and he said to me, he wanted to know whether an Airbus 330 will be able to land at Air Force Base Waterkloof. He first wanted to know if an aircraft, I said, what type of aircraft? And he said, it's an Airbus 330. I said, yes, it is possible. And why I said it's possible, it's because we can accommodate an aircraft of that size in terms of all the ground support equipment that we have. And I mentioned to him that although we will have to still have the overflight clearance from the Air Force Command Post. And he said that he will then continue with the
just one
procedure.
Second,
Yes.
Colonel Anderson. The aircon, if it could be reduced a bit, it seems that its noise is interfering. Yes, you may continue.
Then he phoned me again and said to me that he's going to send the advance team of the delegation to us for a site visit. That visit took place on the 2nd of April. Mr. Ashok, I was introduced to him as Mr. Ashok, I'm not sure if it's his name or his surname, and another gentleman came to the base and they discussed with me that the aircraft's going to arrive.
Before you proceed, was it normal practice that if there was to be an aircraft that was going to land there, a team be sent from the Department of International Relations to make any inspections, conduct any inspections? Was that normal practice?
Yes, that is.
Okay, all right, continue.
Then they explained to me that it was going to be 150 to 200 passengers, and they wanted to know, they wanted to have a breakfast for the people. So I explained to them that our facilities will not be able to accommodate that number of people. I suggest that they contact the officers' mess across the road to see if they can arrange that. So he explained to me, no, it's not a sit-down breakfast. It will be coffee and tea and then just snacks. And I also explained to him that the two lounges we had, the IP lounge and the VIP lounge, would not be able to accommodate that number of people. So he said, but let's just look at the facility. So we went through the facility, and adjacent to the 2 lounges is a reception area. And he wanted to know if they will also be able to use that reception area. And I said to him that it's not a problem, and because then we will be able to accommodate. That was the visit on the 2nd, and then I had another...
Maybe before you proceed to another visit, let's deal with Mr. Ashok. When we had a consultation yesterday, I had shown you some emails that you had exchanged with him. And I wanted to know what his surname was. What was his surname?
I was introduced to him as Mr. Ashok, but later I found out that his surname was Chwala or Chala, something like that.
Yes.
But I thought his surname was Ashok. I called him Mr. Ashok.
Yes, thank you. Before you deal with that meeting, Chair, just to put that correspondence, it is from FF5, Chair. That may not have been brought, but to the extent that, just to give the reference, it's page 061 of Exhibit FF5. May I just hand these up to the witness? She had written, she had correspondence exchange between herself and Mr. Ashok Chawla. I beg your pardon, page 61. I beg your pardon. I'll give you that email. Can you see that? Is that the email?
Yes.
Who sent that email?
It came from me.
Yes. And you copied him?
Yes, Ashok.
Yes, Ashok. It says, you call it Ashok because S-A, could you just spell it for the record?
ASHUC.
And then what's the email address in full?
The email address is ASHUC111@gmail.com.
Yes. Is that the person that you were liaising with?
Yes, Chair, that was.
Now, did he tell you who he represented?
No, he did not.
And who did you think he was?
I was under the impression that he was a protocol officer from DIRCO.
Yes. And is that what you still believe today?
Yes, I would say I still believe that he was, I thought he was the protocol officer.
Yes. Now, let's just then move on. Other than Mr. Ashok, who else did you deal with in making up arrangements other than your official staff? Any other person from outside that you dealt with in setting up arrangements?
Chair, the only other person was Ambassador Koloane.
Yes. And then you were going to move to the meeting, the second meeting that you had with Ambassador Koloane present?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Ms. Norman, to interrupt you.
Yes.
Chawla. You led the evidence of Sundaram, didn't you?
I did, yes, Chair.
I had occasion to have a look at his statement recently.
Yes.
I seem to think, I may be wrong, that he said somewhere in his statement that the person who acted as the liaison person between themselves and the president or the presidency,
Yes.
I can't remember which one,
Yes.
was Chawla.
Yes, Chair.
Is that your recollection as well?
That is correct, Chair.
Okay.
Yes, that is the same person.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, okay.
It's just that the witness in her statement, she says Ashok with an
Yes,
A-S-H-O-O-K. Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
yeah.
It is the same person. Thank you. Then, Ambassador Koloane, just as you would have listened to his evidence, am I correct, Colonel Anderson? We do not have to go into details about what transpired between yourselves, only to the extent that your role is relevant. He has already testified before the Commission. But could you then tell the chairperson about a meeting where he was present at the Waterkloof base?
Yes, Chair, that meeting took place on the 22nd of
I'm
April.
sorry, just bring the mic a little closer to you, maybe that will help as well. Yeah.
That meeting took place on the 22nd of April. We went through the arrival procedures with him, as well as it was Mr. Ashok and 2 or 3 other gentlemen. And I basically went through them with the arrival procedure and then the departure procedure again.
That is with Ambassador Kolwane.
Ambassador Kolwane.
Who else was present?
Mr. Ashok was also present, Chair.
Yes. At this meeting, at the time that you had the meeting on the 22nd of April, had you received any authorizations for the landing of the aircraft?
No, sir. Chair, I also mentioned at that meeting to the ambassador that we can proceed with the arrival and the departure procedures, provided we get the overflight clearance, because at that stage we still did not have the overflight clearance.
Yes. And then when did you get those?
I got that on the 23rd, the following day.
Yes. After then, is the process then of you getting the clearance did it happen before you had a conversation with Major Njisi, or did it happen thereafter?
Chair, I had the conversation with Warrant Officer Njisi on the 9th of April, and I got the clearance on the 23rd of April.
Yes. You have listened, am I correct, to the recordings between your conversations and Ambassador Kolwane and your conversations with Major Njisi. For the record, do you dispute anything that is recorded therein?
No, Chair, I do not.
Yes. Chair, those that are contained in Exhibit FF13A, and the witness was dealt with those yesterday. Yes, thank you. And in respect of both witnesses, you do not dispute the recordals as being correct?
I do not dispute it, it is correct.
Yes, thank you. Now, then after then you received now the approvals, what was the next step?
We normally have a briefing the day before the arrival of the aircraft with the personnel to explain to them what time the aircraft will be arriving, what procedures must be followed in terms of ground support equipment, baggage handling, and the arrival of the passengers.
And at what time then did the aircraft land?
The aircraft landed, the first aircraft, the
Yes.
Airbus.
The Airbus, yes.
That aircraft landed shortly after 8 that morning.
And who else landed there on that day?
We also had overflight clearances for 2 fixed-wing aircraft, as well as 6 helicopters that ferried from wherever to Waterkloof. Ferry means they came to Waterkloof empty. And at one of the meetings, Ambassador Kolwane, he phoned me and he said that the original arrangement was that the passengers were going to be transported to Sun City with a bus and vehicles. And then he phoned and he said, but there's going to be 2 fixed-wing aircraft and 9 helicopters that's now going to take some of the passengers to Sun City.
Yes. It is not an issue that Ambassador Kolwane conveyed to you that there were going to be ministers on that aircraft, on the big aircraft. Is that correct?
It's not unusual. Chair, I must state to you that there was a very professional relationship between myself and Ambassador Kolwane, and we communicated multiple times on various flights. So it was not strange that he mentioned to me that there will be ministers on board that aircraft. Yes.
And then comes the morning of the 30th when the aircraft landed. Did you see any ministers?
We tried to get a list, Chair, of all the president's names. We never got hold of that. And we also did not know whether the ministers were males or females. So Mr. Ashok went to the aircraft once it was parked. And what normally happens is he will introduce the VIPs to the person that represents the base officer commanding, which was in this case Colonel Visser. He will then introduce them to the meter and greeter so that he can welcome them on the Air Force base. But that unfortunately did not happen because once the aircraft stopped, Mr. Ashok went to the aircraft. The first people that disembarked the aircraft were ladies, and he took them to the lounge. So we waited to find out who was the ministers, but they were never introduced to us.
Am I correct that the basis upon which you would have been comfortable with the aircraft in your position, official position, landing there, would have been if there were ministers on board?
That's right, sir. Chair, they will be able to land there.
Yes, but what then were the steps that you took? Seeing that no one was introducing the ministers and you knew that the basis upon which any aircraft could land there, if it's carrying a president, deputy president, according to the evidence that has been led, or ministers?
Chair, even if I knew there was no ministers on board that flight, there was nothing that I could do at that stage.
As at the morning of the 30th April, when the aircraft was about to land, was your knowledge that there were ministers coming with the aircraft?
Yes, sir.
That was your
Yes,
understanding?
Chair. Yes.
Yes. And that understanding you had got from who?
From Ambassador Koloani, Chair.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And that is following up on the Chair's question, that's the same information you conveyed to Major Nchisi?
Yes, Chair. That's the same information I conveyed to him.
Yes. Now, could you then tell the Chair, so people are disembarking the aircraft, then what happened?
They were taken to the lounges, and tea and coffee was provided to them. Somebody from the embassy, I can't remember the gentleman's name, took all the passports, and I escorted him with the passenger list to the immigration official, and we started with the immigration process.
How did immigration know that there was going to be people landing?
The base command post distributes a list to all the relevant departments, to the Department of Agriculture, Border Police, Forestry and Fisheries, Customs. They distribute all the information to the relevant departments, and then they will arrive there on the morning of the arrival to do their responsible tasks.
Yes. And then these, supposing that you had seen ladies alighting, disembarking the aircraft, and one would maybe assume that maybe they are the ministers, but then what about the 217 or 200 other people? What was your understanding of what these people were coming to do in South Africa?
Chair, at that meeting on the 2nd, Mr. Ashok did mention that they were coming to a wedding function, but my responsibilities as the officer in charge of movements is to facilitate the arrival procedures and the departure procedures. The purpose of what the delegation does in South Africa, it's not my responsibility. I cannot give an opinion about that.
Yes. Had you in the past before the 30th of April, had you had a wedding party arriving at Waterkloof?
Not that I know of, Chair.
Yes. Any other party, if it's not a wedding party, without any ministers?
There was one incident during the 2010 World Cup soccer where the team of the Netherlands went through our facilities. I can't remember what aircraft they were on, but they made use of the facilities.
Yes.
Well, that's important, because I was going to ask you the question, to what extent the Waterkloof Air Base has in the past, or had in the past prior to this, been used for the landing of aircrafts which did not carry a head of state, or a prime minister, or a deputy president, or a minister. Had that ever happened in your experience since you were at Waterkloof? Is that something that used to happen?
No, sir. Not that I know of. That the others, they were military aircraft, but that was military personnel. But I do not know. I'm not of any such aircraft.
Yes. Did you say you started at Waterkloof in 2004?
Just repeat the question.
Did you say you started working at Waterkloof in 2004?
Yes, Chairperson.
From 2004 to 2013, how much of that time did you spend working in a position where you would have known this information if such aircrafts did land which didn't carry a president, or a minister or prime minister?
Chairperson, when I started there, I was the base ops officer. So I would have known from 2008 if such flights took place.
So from 2008 to 2013, if such a flight had landed, you would have known?
Even from 2004.
Even from 2004. Yes. So are you able to say from 2004 to 2013, except for the flight that you are talking about that carried the Netherlands team, soccer team for the World Cup, no other flights landed at Waterkloof Air Base which did not carry either a president or a deputy president or a prime minister or a minister?
Chair, I think, if I can remember correctly, the King of Swaziland, his mother, the Queen Mother, she made use of the facilities. But other than that, I do not know of any.
Well, the former Minister of International Relations, who was Minister of International Relations at the time, in 2013, Ms. Nkwane Mashabane, gave evidence here some time back. I may be wrong, but I seem to think that she said something along the lines that the landing of aircrafts at Waterkloof Air Force Base that did not carry a president or deputy president or prime minister, maybe or minister, was not something unusual. I may be misrepresenting what she said, but she said something that created the impression to me that maybe the landing of this aircraft in 2013 shouldn't be seen as something that should have caused the big noise that happened, because commercial aircrafts land there quite regularly. I may be misrepresenting what she said. I don't know whether Ms. Norman has any recollection.
No, Chair, I do not have a recollection. I think the difference she drew a difference between president, vice president, deputy presidents,
yes,
and the ministers.
Yes.
And then she was saying, so far as the ministers are concerned,
yes,
they were landing there, because if you recall,
yes,
the evidence of Major Nchisi,
yes,
was that it would be the president and the deputy president.
Oh,
largely.
okay,
But we'll verify that during the lunch break.
No, that's fine.
Yes.
So your recollection is that she was saying ministers also land there?
Yes, under certain circumstances,
okay,
yes.
Okay, no, and that would fall in line with your understanding?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Chair. Sorry. And then, at what point then did you realize that maybe what happened there on that day ought not to have happened?
Chairperson, shortly after the aircraft landed, or let me start before the aircraft landed, the helicopters and the fixed-wing aircraft that were supposed to take the passengers to Sun City, they were supposed to land at 8 o'clock in the morning. But the task, in aviation we work with Bravo time and Zulu time. Time at the moment is Bravo time. but the task was tasked for in Zulu, which means it was 06 Zulu, which means it's actually 08, but they arrived 2 hours early. So our standard operation procedures is 2 hours before an aircraft arrives, we need to be at work and everything needs to be ready. So when I arrived there at Waterkloof that morning, I heard helicopters in the background, and I realized those aircraft were on the way 2 hours too early. And it was still quite dark. But fortunately, some of the marshallers were already there, and between the marshallers and myself, we were able to park those aircraft because it was dark. But then, when I got back to the building, there was a lot of people, and there were a lot of things happening at the same time. The welcome party was more than what we indicated to them. We normally have a welcome party of about 12, but the welcome party was much more than 12 people. So there was a lot of people, and at a certain stage I realized that this was maybe not what's supposed to happen. But it was not in my job description to make a noise about that.
Let's just deal with that aspect. Then you felt uncomfortable. You're seeing all these people walking around. What were your concerns at that point?
There was, remember I mentioned that when the ambassador phoned me the first time, he mentioned something about a cultural event. I didn't listen properly because I wasn't interested on what they are coming to do here. I was more interested in the type of aircraft. But later it became known that they wanted some traditional dances to welcome these passengers. And I was under the impression that traditional dances is maybe going to be 5 or 6 people. It was more, it was about 15 to 20 people that was performing traditional dances. And my security people, the 504 security squadron people, they were on duty to contain the people because at that stage nobody went outside the building. The traditional dancers were standing at the entrance door of the lounge. Is that what you...
Well, so we are dealing with your concerns.
Yes, I basically just sensitized the security people and the military police to tell them there's more people that we expected. They must just do their responsible duties and try to contain the people.
Maybe we should, before we go to the charges that happened later on, just deal with the changes within the airport that were brought about by Mr. Chawla and people that he was working with.
The request that they wanted to present tea and coffee, I said to them at that meeting, we don't have 200 cups and saucers and side plates. We cannot accommodate the tea and coffee. So they said, no, that's not a problem. They will arrange for the tea and coffee. And they also indicated that they want to bring in coffee tables and easy chairs. That's when I decided that I will vacate that area adjacent to the lounge and take out all the Defence Force furniture, which were about 20 easy chairs and 5 coffee tables. I moved them to a separate room so that the Defence Force furniture doesn't get mingled up with the other people's furniture. I took that out.
Yes, but does that usually happen, that people could bring in furniture within the base and put up their own equipment?
Yes, it's happened before that we used that specific area for functions. We had the Africa Aerospace and Defence opening function there once, and they brought in their furniture.
Yes. Now, so then you've got these many people, and then you went through, according to you, there were immigration officers who had informed all these departments to be present.
Chair, the base command post distribute the list to all the different departments to inform them of the arrival times.
Is that your section?
No, the base command post.
Yes.
The base command post is level 4, and we are level 5.
Yes. But SARS was there, health was there, and who else was there?
Port Health was there, immigration was there, border police was there, and I can't remember if the customs, the people were there, but the arrangement that we have with that department, if they are not there, then the movements people will X-ray and scan all the incoming luggage, and that is what happened. The movements personnel scanned and X-rayed all the luggage that came in.
Yes. Could you just tell the chairperson the process that you followed in checking the passports and verifying who's come into the building?
Chair, with the previous visits we had, if it's a big group of people, the protocol officer normally collects all the passports with the PAX list, the passenger list, and we take that to the immigration official. He will verify the passports with the passenger list, but it's his prerogative to, at any stage, stop the process and say he wants to see every person with his own private passport. We cannot stop him. If that is what he requests, then we will do it, but the custom is that we normally take the passports in a bunch with the passenger list, and they verify it from there.
And were you satisfied with that process? Somebody takes a bunch of 217 passports, gives them to the immigration officer, and there's nobody to come with the passport.
Yes, Chair. There was somebody from the embassy that also escorted all the passports.
Then, after that day, which is, then what ultimately happened to the passengers? How did they leave the airport?
Some of the passengers, Chair, left with the helicopters and the fixed wings, and the rest were with vehicles taken by road to Sun City.
Yes. Is it correct that everything that happened within movement would have been authorized by yourself? If there's going to be bringing in of chairs, there's going to be sitting arrangements, there's going to be parking bays allocated, that would have fallen within your authority?
Yes, Chair, that is correct.
Yes, and everything that happened there was authorized by yourself?
That is correct.
Yes, thank you. Then, after that, then, as you are aware, then there was a lot of media attention to this, and there were some inquiries. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair. What happened is when the aircraft left, when all the passengers were gone, I went to the operations room because I was keen that all the people, the passengers, leave as soon as possible, because there was another flight that took part that morning, and we've got a parking bay that's allocated to the President's aircraft. And we had to keep that parking bay clear. So because our President was also flying that day, I wanted to get the area clear as soon as possible. So once all the passengers left, I went to the operations room and to find out if the flights of the President is still the same time. That's when they told me in the operations room that the media is aware of this flight and there's a lot of media attention.
Where was the President flying to?
The President was supposed to fly to Sun City, but when I got to the ops room, I looked at the boards and I said to them, where's the flight for the President, because he's supposed to fly to Sun City? And they said, no, it was just cancelled. He's now flying to Congo, DRC. And then he flew to Congo, DRC later that afternoon.
Yes. From that base?
From Waterkloof, yes.
Now, let's deal then with the inquiry. What was the first time that you were told that there was something wrong, That is, if there's anything wrong, there was something wrong with the landing of that aircraft at Waterkloof Base.
That morning when I went to the operations room, and shortly after that, that same day, the Chief of the Air Force phoned and said, we must come to the Air Force headquarters, he wants to see me. That's when we were told that things were not what they're supposed to be.
Yes.
I'm sorry, at some stage that morning, I guess you got to know that there were no ministers in the that had been passengers in the aircraft. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chair.
Isn't that the time that you would have become aware that because there were no ministers, this aircraft should not have been cleared to land at Waterkloof Air Base?
Chair, the thing is, there were so many things that was happening at the same time. The passports were being processed, the baggage were being x-rayed and scanned. The passengers that flew to Sun City, we had to ensure that those passengers go to the right aircraft. The other passengers that went with the vehicles, there was not time to make that visible.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is there is a time when you became aware that there were no ministers in this aircraft. So I would have expected that the moment you got to know that fact, something would have said to you, so this aircraft should not have been cleared. Maybe we were misled.
Chair, it was never confirmed to me that there's no ministers on board that aircraft.
Or that was never confirmed to you?
It was never confirmed that there was no...
On that day or even subsequently?
Subsequently, nobody has ever confirmed that there was no ministers on board that aircraft.
So up to today, you don't know whether there were or there were no ministers?
That's correct, Chair.
You just know that you had been told in advance that there would be ministers?
That's correct, Chair.
Yes. If there are ministers, wouldn't there be a procedure that would be followed after they have landed, whether it's a minister or president, deputy president, or prime minister from another country or anything like that? Would there not be a procedure to be followed in terms of protocol that would have brought this to your attention?
Chair, the normal procedure is that the minister or the VIP, the most senior person on board the aircraft, disembarks the aircraft first. A representative from DIRCO, as well as the Waterkloof meter and greeter, will meet them at the steps of the aircraft and escort them into the building. Whether that happened or not, I don't know. The VIPs were never introduced to the meter and greeter. Mr. Ashok met the people that disembarked first, and he escorted them to the building. So whether those were ministers or not ministers, I don't know. They were ladies. As I say, we never knew. We were never informed whether the ministers was ladies or males.
You said earlier on the chief of the Air Force Base or the chief of the Defense Force called you that day, that morning?
The chief of the Air Force.
Yes. You said he called you that morning.
That's right.
That's right. I gained the impression from your evidence that whatever he may have said to you made you realize that there was something wrong with this aircraft. What did you think was wrong with it, and what was the basis for thinking so?
My only thought was, I cannot confirm that there were ministers on board that aircraft. So I think, and because of the number of people that disembarked the aircraft, I think I realized that there must be a problem with this aircraft. But other than that, not really.
Yes, but if you didn't know whether there were ministers or there were no ministers, that wouldn't lead you to conclude that there was something wrong with the aircraft. You would only conclude that there was something wrong with the aircraft if
Yes.
you established or if you thought that there were no ministers, isn't it?
Once again, Chair, if we receive an overflight clearance from the Air Force Command Post, that is my authority that that aircraft can land there. I'm just the executing person and the person that facilitates the arrival. Who's on board that aircraft, who's not on board that aircraft, is not my responsibility. I have an overflight clearance, and it says this aircraft can land here. And whether there was ministers on board the aircraft or not, I am not in a position to question that.
No, that part I understand. You were asked the question, I think, whether by me or by Ms. Norman, at what stage you realized that there was something wrong about the aircraft, and you indicated, and then I asked you, and I said to you, you said that you were called by, I think you said the Chief of the Air Force, and I said you gave me the impression when you talked about him calling you, that after that you realized that there was something wrong about the aircraft. Remember, then I asked you the question, and then you said, well, you were not sure whether there were ministers or there were not ministers. So I'm trying to establish what it is that you thought was wrong with the landing of the aircraft or with something about this aircraft, and how you came to that conclusion. Did I misunderstand your evidence? Okay, let me start again. Did you at any stage on the 30th of April, the day on which the aircraft landed, take the view that there was something wrong about that aircraft landing at Waterkloof Air Force Base?
No, I did, no, Chair.
Yes. Yeah. Did you take that view at any stage after that? Since then up to now?
After I heard all the information that was on the media, then I realized that could have been a problem. But before that, not.
What is it that you heard or learned that made you think there was a problem?
The media was referring to wedding guests for a private function.
And so? Why did that make it wrong for the aircraft to land?
Some of the people at Movements told me that morning, do I know that there's a lot of media across the road at the local garage? So I said, no, I did not know there was a lot of media attention. And looking at what happened with the arrival and no indication of any ministers, then I realized, but because there was no ministers introduced. So that made me think, but maybe this was not above board. But it's not my position to make a comment like that.
Are you saying that at some stage on the 30th of April, that is the day of the landing of the aircraft, you got to know that there was no minister in the aircraft?
As I say, it was never confirmed to me that there was no ministers on board that aircraft.
Yes. So, is there anything that you had on that day that made you think that there was something wrong about the landing of the aircraft?
No.
What did the Chief of the Air Force say to you when he called you?
He wanted to know what procedures we followed to get the authority, the overflight clearance.
Yes.
And I explained to him the same, that the request came from DIRCO, and once we've got the overflight clearance, then we can proceed with the functions to perform for the arrival. And he wanted to know who was all informed of the arrival, and I also mentioned to him that all the relevant state departments was present. There was military police present. Our security was present.
Did he have any concern about the landing of the aircraft? Did he express any concern about the landing of the aircraft? Do you know why he was asking all these questions to you?
No. I listened to all the radio bulletins that was there. And that was the deduction that I made, that something was not above board, and they need to investigate and find out where the problem, why was this aircraft tasked to land there.
Yes, but my question is whether the Chief of the Air Force expressed any concern to you about the landing of the aircraft when he called you.
Yes, he did, because that's why he called us.
What was that concern?
Chair, I can't remember exactly what his concern was, but I knew he wanted to know what was the background to the authorization of this flight.
It was not that the aircraft should not have landed should not have been authorized to land at the Waterkloof Air Force Base. Was that not a concern he expressed?
I think that was, but I can't answer that. I'm sorry, but he wanted to know what led to the authorization of the flight.
Yes. And did you talk about whether those who gave the authorization knew whether there would be ministers or head of state, deputy head of state in the aircraft? Did he raise that issue at all, whether they knew about that?
I cannot remember exactly what was raised at that meeting. I know that the officer in charge of the Air Force Command Post was also present at that meeting.
Yes. Yes, well, I was asking you these questions because I got the impression earlier on that when you came out of that meeting, from your evidence, that when you came out of that meeting with the Chief of the Air Force, you believed that there was something wrong about the landing of this aircraft, and I was seeking to establish what it is that you understood was wrong as at that time. Was my impression of your evidence wrong?
The impression that I got was because it was a private aircraft.
Yes. But private aircrafts had landed as far, yeah.
Yes, Chair.
And that should not have been a concern to him, should it have been? That on its own?
Private aircraft has landed there, but with clearance from the Air Force Command Post.
Yes, of course there was clearance here, isn't it?
The overflight clearance. The authority from the Air Force Command Post.
Yes. I mean, there was here, was not.
Can you just...
The clearance
Yes.
that should be there first was there in regard to this aircraft as well, isn't it?
Yes, Chair, there was a
Yes.
clearance.
So he should not have had any concern once he knew that there was clearance, even if it was a private aircraft, unless he thought that it did not meet the requirements on the basis of which the clearance should be given, isn't it? In other words, once there is clearance, the fact that it was a private aircraft should not have been a concern on its own. Is that right?
That's correct, Chair.
It should only have been a concern if there was something else he was concerned about.
That's correct, Chair.
And you don't know what it was that he was concerned about.
Not at that stage.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. Following up on the Chair's, may I just refer you to page 3 of your statement, Colonel Anderson? paragraph 13. That relates to the questions that the Chair has put to you. Could you just read, with your permission, Chair, 13.1? Chair, that is a response to the report of the JCPS.
Yes.
3.2 of that, of the report deals with arrival phase.
Yes.
It's entitled arrival phase.
Okay.
Yes. Could you just read your responses to that, please?
I did agree with Colonel Frederickson and Colonel Visser that the flight should never have landed. I only came to this conclusion after the flight has landed, and I realized that there were no ministers on board the flight.
So, I just want you to reflect on your answers that you have given to the Chair on that issue.
Chair, if I can refer back to this paragraph, the ministers were never introduced, so I assumed at that stage there was no ministers, or the ministers was kept private. And if you look at all the people that arrived there, all the additional helicopters, the vehicles, that has never happened before. I mentioned to Advocate Norman yesterday that at one stage it felt like the base was captured by this Indian delegation.
Well, I ask the question again. Did you at any stage on the day on which this aircraft landed, namely the 30th April, take the view that this aircraft should not have been allowed to land at the Air Force Base?
Yes, Chair, that's the comment I made that morning to Colonel Frederickson and Colonel Visser, but that was my personal opinion. It was not, I wasn't challenging, I was just my personal opinion that looking at all the activities that has taken place, they should actually have gone to a commercial airfield.
Well, you must tell me if I misunderstand your evidence. I thought earlier on you had given different evidence, namely that you didn't know if there was anything wrong with the landing of that aircraft on that day and subsequently until you had, I think at some stage you said, until you had read certain articles or had some things in the media.
No, Chair, I must correct myself. Paragraph 13.1 is correct.
But do you agree with me that it seems to be inconsistent with what you told me earlier on?
I agree with you, sir.
Yes. Okay. Ms. Norman, do you want to take it from there?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Given your evidence, Colonel Anderson, if I follow it properly, it really didn't matter to you whether there would have been ministers or not there because, according to you, DERCO had approved and there were overflight clearances. Is that how you looked at the matter?
That is correct, Chairperson.
So at what point then did you realize that it ought not to have happened? Because with that in mind, supposing that one just goes by the approvals, one goes by DERCO's approvals, with that in mind, knowing that I've received these documents, why would it matter whether it ought or not, it ought or ought not to have landed at the Waterkloof base?
Once again, Chair, the comment that I made is not in my, I should not have made that comment, let me put it that way, because it's not my area of responsibility of what the purpose of the flight is. My purpose is to facilitate the arrival procedures and the departure procedures. But I made that comment when I witnessed all the things that were happening, the traditional dances, the additional helicopters. That's when I realized that this was actually supposed to take place at a commercial airfield.
Well, it might not be your responsibility, but it it may be that it might not be right to take a view that as long as there was the clearance, you shouldn't have bothered about anything else, because isn't the position that you would not have liked to be party to anything that may have been illegal or improper? And if there was something that you thought was improper, you would have felt at ease to raise it with somebody and say, should this really be happening? Why is this done? Because in terms of the rules, it shouldn't be done. I don't want to be party to anything that's improper or unlawful.
Chairperson, in my time working with DIRCO, I've never had any reason to question any of the flights that arrived at Waterkloof. And this was a unique case, in my opinion, because with the number of guests, I've never experienced it in this way. That's why I thought that maybe they could have used another venue.
But isn't that all the more reason why you would be entitled to ask questions? Because something completely unusual, say, we have never done anything like this. Is it right? Is it proper?
With my discussions with Ambassador Kolani, he mentioned to me every time that I spoke to him on the telephone and in person, he mentioned to me that our president is aware of this flight and that he knows about this flight. Now, when I was still the officer in charge of movements, I had 5 primary objectives, and that was to never to avoid an embarrassment to the president, the deputy president, the minister of defense, the chief of the defense force, and the chief of the air force. I said I will ensure that they will not be embarrassed. But the way Ambassador Kolani constantly referred to the knowledge of the president of this flight, I did not feel in my position I can query or question this.
But of course, wouldn't your attitude of not wanting to do anything that would embarrass the president include not wanting to be party to anything that may be improper or may be illegal? Because then the president might then be associated with something improper. Wouldn't that make you say no, but then it means things must be done properly if this is associated with the president?
Chairperson, I was under the impression that this was the wish of the president.
And you wanted to do whatever was necessary to make sure his wish materialized.
That's correct, Chairperson.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. Then moving forward, then you were, after that interaction with the Chief of the Air Force, what happened to you?
Chairperson, then there was a board of inquiry that was convened with, I think, Lieutenant General Mgwebi, that was the president of that board. And I was placed on special leave, I think on the 3rd of May or the 2nd of May. And I did not return to work even till after I retired.
Yes. There is also, you also lodged, you agree with the record that is contained in FF4, which is the Board of Inquiry recordal of your evidence before the board.
Yes.
Yes, that's the evidence that you gave.
That is correct.
And also what is contained from page 9 is the affidavit, which we've already identified that you had filed with the board at the time.
That's correct, Chair.
Yes. Then You lodged a...
Maybe
sorry,
before
sorry,
that, Mr.
yes.
Newman, just
Yes.
to go back to what you said
Earlier.
a few minutes earlier. Is it possible that your desire to make sure that if this is what the President wished to happen, it should happen, namely what Mr. Kolwane had said to you, is it possible that your desire to make sure that that wish of the President materialized may have influenced you in any way to overlook one or other thing that maybe you should not have overlooked, or that maybe you should have raised with some officials to say, but this thing looks not right?
No, Chair. That's why I constantly, in all the meetings, reiterated to them that we need to have the overflight clearance. And the overflight clearance is something that is between DIRCO and the Air Force Command Post. I have no say in that process.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Just relating to that response, would you then say, if you accept that you had no role to play insofar as the interactions between DIRCO and command concern, would you agree then maybe it was not appropriate for you to, although you didn't put pressure on Warrant Officer Ntshisi to actually mention that, but are you refusing, this is the President's wish? Would you agree with me that maybe that was not proper because it was not your area according to what you're telling the Chair?
Chair, I didn't phone Warrant Officer Ntshisi. He phoned me and I returned his call. I did not put pressure on him. After our telephone conversation on the 9th of April, he approved, or the Air Force Command Post approved that request. I had meetings with Ambassador Kuluani and Mr. Ashok during that time, and every time I mentioned to them, I'm still waiting for the overflight clearance. If I wanted to put pressure on Warrant Officer Ntshisi, I would have phoned him again and say, where is this overflight clearance? Why don't I get this overflight clearance? So I don't think, no, I'm sure I did not put pressure on him.
Let's accept that it was not pressure. Why was it necessary for you to mention that the President, according to what Ambassador Kolwane, the President was aware of the flight?
Chair, I conveyed what Ambassador Kuluani told me. I just conveyed that again to Warrant Officer Ntshisi. And in the time that I've worked at Waterkloof, it's never happened. I'm not aware of a single case where DIRCO is involved with a request that it was denied. All the requests that I know of that came from DIRCO was approved by the Air Force.
Well, why did you think Ambassador Kolwane had to mention to you that the President knew about the plans for the landing of the aircraft?
That was also strange to me because in all the time that I've worked at Waterkloof dealing with DIRCO, nobody has ever at any planning meeting of any visiting heads of state mentioned that the President is aware of this visit. That's why it was a unique case. It was something completely different. It's never been mentioned to me before that the President knows about this flight and we can continue. At one stage, I think it was on the 17th of April, Ambassador Kuluani phoned me and he said he has just returned from the office of the President and the President wants to know if everything is still on track for this flight. And I once again said to him, once we have the overflight clearance, the rest of the procedures will fall in place.
Did you not think at the time he mentioned to you that the President knew about the flight, the landing of the flight, or that he wanted to know what was happening? Did you not think that he sought to put pressure on you to either expedite whatever needed to be processed or to facilitate the landing of the aircraft by doing whatever needed to be done.
Chairperson, the only time I really felt pressured in a way was when he phoned me, when Ambassador Kolani phoned me to say that all the passengers are not going to travel by road anymore. They are now going to be traveling in 7 helicopters and 2 fixed-wing aircraft. At that stage, I said to him, Ambassador, then you must follow the same procedure that you followed for the Airbus. And I said to him at that stage, if you're not happy with the procedures, then you must phone the officer commanding of the Air Force Command Post, Brigadier General Lombard. And he said to me, but he doesn't have his telephone number. I said to him, I will forward that telephone number to you. And I forwarded that telephone number to him, his office telephone number.
I think Mr. Kolani accepted when he was giving evidence here, at least at a certain stage, that he had put pressure on officials connected with Waterkloof to expedite the approval of the authorization of the landing of the flight. So would you consider yourself to have been one of the officials on whom he put pressure?
In the end, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure whether you would want to deal with each and every area of dispute that you raise insofar as it relates to the JCVS report. But generally, what you had read the report, and after you read the report, you lodged a complaint to the public protector. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chairperson.
Yes. And a decision from the current public protector was also furnished to your attorneys, indicating that the public protector was of the view that because the board of inquiry had cleared you, therefore there was no need for her to pursue the matter.
That is correct, Chairperson.
And what was the nature of your complaint to the public protector?
The reason why we approached the public protector was that during the cluster investigation, I was never given the opportunity to explain my side of the story. I got a telephone call from a warrant officer to say to me that Brigadier General Maketwa wants to see me. But they didn't tell me in connection with what. At that stage, I was already, because I was on special leave, I was already on my way to our farm in Randfontein. So I said to her, I'm not going to turn around now. What is the problem? And I never heard from them again. The next was a letter from the Chief of the Air Force's office with a number of questions. And in that letter of the Chief of the Air Force, it was also indicated that the cluster investigation team were going to be busy that weekend, and I must be available the Friday or the Saturday. If they phone me, then I must come in and assist them with the investigation. They never phoned me. So then the letter that I got from the Air Force, the Chief of the Air Force, had a number of questions. I answered them and I forwarded back to the Chief of the Air Force's office.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just to deal with that aspect, the Public Protector's Report, Chair, I may just give references. It's Exhibit FF2B and FF2A. You would have those records there, but there is a letter which shows that the list of questions that you were given was actually from the cluster minister, the directors general who were investigating the matter.
That's correct, Chair.
Did you get to understand that later, that in fact they had sent a list of questions for you to respond to?
Yes, Chair, I did.
Thank you. Chair, relevant pages will be from page 5 to 8 and 5 to 9, where Colonel Anderson's responses up to 5:30, where her responses are contained and the list of questions.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Then, sorry. And you had indicated that insofar as the adverse findings in the report, which is attached to the statement of Ms. Sindane, which is contained in Exhibit FF1,
Yes.
that all the adverse findings you were not happy with.
That's correct, Chairperson, and we answered those in the letter.
In the note, yes, thank you. Chair, that is the evidence from this witness. With your leave,
Yes.
that is all. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Colonel Anderson, for coming to give evidence. I don't have any questions, so thank you very much. If we ever need you to come back, we will approach you again. Thank you very
Chair.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Interpreter. I see that Colonel Anderson ended up not needing your services, but thank you that you were around in case she needed to express something in Afrikaans. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Well, I think we'll need to just adjourn for the lunch break
Yes, Chair.
and then come back at 2.
At 2 o'clock, yes, Chair.
And then there will be two
Witnesses.
further witnesses.
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. We'll take the lunch break now. We'll resume at 2.
Thank
We
you, Chair.
adjourn.
Thank you.
Bye.